All right, Molly and Mickey, thank you for being here with me today. Leo Brady for AMovieGuy.com. It's so exciting to have you both. This is an interesting and excellent film. I'm interested by Mickey's films in general, so I'm excited to talk to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I was wondering, I guess my first question is going to be, I have a lot of questions for Molly, and I have questions for Mickey. But for Molly, I mean, your acting career started where you got involved in the Young Actors Studio, which is kind of an awesome thing for to happen. So for you, acting wise, do you know if there's a can you even pinpoint one thing that you learned from Young Actors Studio that helped you prepare for this career?
Oh my goodness, you're going way back. But of course, the Young Actors Studio is where I met Cindy Osbrink, who was my first agent. I was obsessed with Dakota Fanning, still am, and that was Dakota's agent. So that I got to meet Cindy and that we ended up working together for so long, of course, was the genesis. It's how I'm still here, getting to meet wonderful people who I'm still really close with, and everything stems from those good relationships. It really is. There's a lot of family dynamics in Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, and it's a good way to just start and get your foot in the door to learn the craft. I guess some would call it the old-fashioned way these days.
Sure. I was lucky in my hometown of Texarkana. There was a man named Martin Beck who had moved back to Texas from New York and was just looking for something to do. So he started an acting studio. I'm pretty sure for the first couple of years, it was just me and him in his living room doing monologues. He was fantastic. He was my first mentor and made me feel like anything was possible.
That's awesome. Well, and we've got Mickey here. So, I mean, Mickey, this isn't the first film of yours that I've watched. I've seen a couple of your other ones, and you definitely take a unique approach towards whether it's genre or certain themes in movies. Last film was vampires. This film, it's more exorcism. Tell me a little bit about like the nucleus of Agnes and how you came up with this film.
Yeah, on the set of Climb of the Hunter, we were, all kind of working on it, talking and saying, and I just said, I think I want to do nuns next. And I think that was kind of like, all right, so we're doing nuns next, you know what I mean? So it was just kind of like working around that. He was really just more visually fascinated by that. And then when John Selvage and I, my co-writer, like started writing the script, luckily he had a very kind of extensive Catholic background, so he was able to fill in the blanks on a lot of that stuff. And been for so in the same vein as Climb of the Hunter, we talked about a lot of different themes. We talked about a lot of different like symbolism and metaphors and stuff that are used throughout it. And we don't want to do anything to like hit anybody over the head with it or anything like that. So it becomes kind of ambiguous. In that the themes we've talked about, but then we work them in some other way that isn't so obvious. And so I think mainly the big nun fascination was just visually, like how like to try to like create these kind of like every shot's a Renaissance painting with these nuns, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, totally. And actually, you kind of, now that you mention it, it's I see that even more. I see that even more in the imagery that you created with these women sort of collected together and standing in rows, and that's interesting, and that worked. But for Molly, this isn't your first time working in horror either. I mean, it was a small role, but you were Mrs. Grady in Dr. Sleep with The Shining, and that's a small part, but awesome. I mean, I think I saw on your profile you talked about how just stepping into that world was a big part of that. Do you have a fascination with horror films, or do you tend to be drawn to narratives like this?
I'm obsessed with horror movies.
Yeah.
It's my favorite genre.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, of course, getting to be Mrs. Grady and Dr. Sleep was I mean, it's like being given a diamond. Like you said, like it's such like a small glimpse into a world, but just getting to be on the recreated set of the Overlook Hotel. I mean, are you kidding me? And getting to work with Mike Flanagan, you know, like the king of horror, like, oh my God, just the nicest guy, the coolest day of my life. Absolutely loved it. Love horror, because I think why I'm so fascinated by horror is it tends to be people in their everyday life that just get like hit over the head with something they don't expect. And I think everyone can kind of connect to like not being believed or feeling like you're looking over your shoulder. Like there are so many real life elements to horror films that I just think it's definitely what draws me to it as an audience member and then as an actor, because there's nothing more fun for me than playing nervous and just anxious. Like to me, those are like the biggest emotions to work with, and I really like big emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, and that you get a lot of that here. I mean, you get a lot of like tense moments here. Mickey, can you talk about bringing Molly onto the project? I mean, she's kind of the narrative veers towards her character, but it's not the title character. It's not. Talk about sort of the idea of kind of faking out your audience and saying like, hey, you might think it's about this over here, but now it's going to turn and be about somebody who's definitely associated with the Agnes character. And just talk about bringing her on the project in general. I mean, what made you say, yeah, definitely bring in Molly Quinn?
Sure, of course. So in the movie, like, you know, it was always a matter of like, these are basically two different movies. How do you plan to unify them? You know what I mean? And, you know, other than just like, you know, visually, like, and then in the style of it all, but like, you know, then it takes such a sharp left turn. But I mean, but Mary is, you know, central in kind of a more ambiguous way in the first part of it. And then she's like, you know, very central in the second half, like, and she is the unifying presence that you know that makes it, you know, the entire movie is really just all about Mary, and it's all about a character. So it's not I think the only reason it seems so wildly you know, out of place in that vein is because like we're used to following story structures, we're used to following like plots, we're used to having a reason that this goes to this and this goes to this, but this is just a character living. We're just, you know, we're following you know, just one particular character. And so John and I wrote the script and then gave it to Divide and Conquer, who produced Climber the Hunter. Yeah. And we're just like, well, here you go. Like, let's see what this does. And it wasn't even like a month or two. Like, and once we sent it out, probably like a month. And then Molly and her team for Quagmire, which is Elon Gale and Matthew Welty, the three of them, you know, formed Quagmire. I'll let her talk about that in a second. But like, then she, so she was interested in acting in it and producing in it, and I was just like, what? Like that's a win-win. All of that is, you know, all of that is great. That's a win-win for everyone. So then Molly and I met over ramen noodles, and awesome. The best ramen noodle place too. And I think it's called, or I can't pronounce it, but it starts with an O. But it was so delicious. I love that place, and I go there and eat every time I'm in LA. Awesome. So we met and we talked about it, and I was just like, you know, this is great. And so you know, Molly kind of spearheaded the whole thing in that manner. She can go on more about that if you'd like.
Yeah.
I mean, Mickey really covered it. We saw Climate of the Hunter because Divide Conquer knew we were looking for an out-of-the-box horror movie, and they said, well, we might have the guy for you. And they absolutely did. We were really intrigued by what Mickey had done with such a limited budget, but his film is just beautiful. He's really surrounded himself with an amazing team. So when we read Agnes, and it was an out of the box horror film, you think you're in a possession movie, you think you're in a religious convent, and all of a sudden, like, girl, bye, like,
Yeah.
Mary's out of there.
Yeah.
So I was attracted to that from a story perspective, and from an actor's perspective. I think the most interesting movies to watch are ensemble casts, especially when you can drop in these incredible actors who really bring, like, just so much life to the movie, where you don't want to leave them. It's like every time I feel like we leave Rachel True too soon, and we
Yeah.
leave Sean Gunn too soon. Like, you just want to
Yeah.
stay with them because they're amazing.
Yeah.
So those were the things that drew me to it as an actor and a producer, and my partners as well. And then Mickey and I met, and we were just slurping up noodles, and we hit it off. Like, it was really very nice. Mickey is a very grounded guy, so talking with him was easy and to the point, and we never had any miscommunications, which is pretty amazing for not knowing each other too long, like you said, before we entered into this business venture together.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's awesome too. I mean, can you talk a little bit more too about even Molly? I don't know if you want to go first about your relationship working together, because sometimes I know some actors want their directors to give them no notes, to not bug them in their process, to not even interrupt them in their thinking, and other actors want to collaborate with the director and say, "Hey, what do you think here?" You've worked with a lot of different directors already, Molly. What would you say, put you kind of on the spot while Mickey's here? How would you grade your overall experience of working with him?
Well, you have to remember that, like, I've been very lucky to work with a lot of great directors already, and I do count Mickey as one of them.
Yeah.
But this was my first time producing and starring.
Yeah.
So we had a real working relationship. I mean, Mickey and I were talking every day about story structure, sets, when he was location scouting, working with Jack Odell, who did costumes, and not just for, like, Mary's character, but putting the Father Black outfit together. So, and then of course, casting, like myself and Alon Gale were casting out of LA, talking with Mickey about different actors we knew that we thought would bring a unique perspective to the world. So we were really working together a lot. And then I think on the character side of creating Mary, we probably had a couple of quick conversations in the beginning about where I wanted her to go. And then Mickey really let me have free reign. And to be honest with you, it's the first time anyone's let me do that. Like, he really trusted me to fully create this character. And I think I can actually say now that I was a little afraid to be given that amount of responsibility. But I had to trust that Mickey trusted me, and that I could do this, and that I could allow him to set up all of our shots and work with Samuel Calvin, our DP, to make sure everything just looked so beautiful and in sync throughout, like you said, the kind of 2 movies in one structure that we have. So it was great. 4 stars. Like, it was fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mickey too, talk about, like, a little bit of the movies you're inspired by. I mean, like, Climate of the Hunter for me almost felt like a Jim Jarmusch film, which is interesting. And this film, Agnes, kind of feels even like, I don't know if you've seen Pavel Pawlowski's Ida. Like, that's a movie about a nun sort of going off on her own, and that's a favorite movie of mine. So but what movies? That's just sort of what I pulled from it. But what for you? What directors and films do you sort of do you lean on or think about when you're trying to make or write and make these movies?
Well, I usually lean on one particular movie that kind of defines, the world of whatever movie. So with Climb of the Hunter, it was like Daughters of Darkness. It doesn't exist in that world. It doesn't exist in ours. And then the movie with this one was Fat City. I mean, once we got outside of the convent, it was. Have you seen John Huston's Fat City?
No, I haven't actually.
Well, it's a it's a fantastic movie. But
Yeah.
a lot of that was happening. A lot of and you know, I knew by taking a movie like that and trying to you know, um, just use it as inspiration as much as you can. You know, it's never going to be the same thing. You know what I mean? It's like you can take anything and just really just straight, you know, rip it off even if you want to, but it's never going to quite come out like that. You know what I mean? There are too many other things at play, and there's too many. And then, you know, adding my own sensibilities to it are, you know, just kind of just, it's just more of a starting point, and then it just kind of becomes its own thing. So yeah, and I don't know that there was anything from the first half of the movie that is you know, I think that's just pretty standard. It's pretty by the book, you know, of a classic exorcism film. You know what I mean?
Right.
From what I understand, I haven't seen that many exorcism films myself. You know, Black Narcissus, of course, was like, you know, visually inspiring for it, and then and The Devils, of course. There and just the idea of nunsploitation, but I didn't really. But I wanted to be classier than that, I guess. You know what I mean? Because I was more focused on the cinematography, like something like Ida. You know what I mean? I was more interested in, like, you know, having these nuns, you know, be in a classier environment than most of the nunsploitation films.
Yeah.
So I don't really. So I think people will say nunsploitation whenever referring to it, but it couldn't be further from what it is.
Yeah. Well, and Molly too, talk about like working with the collective group of the nuns. I mean, like they're all like very individuals. You can tell each different character, each one. Talk about how you guys kind of bonded on set. How did you guys sort of become the team of nuns that you had to be?
I love that you see them as individual because they so are, and I think something that Mickey and I bonded over was kind of rejecting the idea that nuns move as this like singular Borg-like character. You know what I mean? Like, I think that people join religious orders and clubs and small groups of people because they want to be kept in check, right? Like they know that they're gonna go outside the bounds, and they want someone to be a mother hen. They want to mother hen each other. And so I love that. Like, I think one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when a lot of the nuns are gathered at the window watching Benjamin and Donahue arrive. And for a lot of those personalities, we just really allowed the actresses to do that. We just said, hey, just be you. You're just wearing a habit.
Right.
That's the only thing. I think a funny thing I had to watch was a couple of the sisters would try to sneak lip gloss on before they got on camera. So like my producer hat would come by. Like I ended up keeping just like a little disinfectant like wipe with me, and I was like, you can't wear any lipstick. But even that was kind of this like fun, funny, almost sorority like environment that we all created together, like trying to get away with stuff. And again, like all of us like keeping each other in check. And of course, you know, Rachel True kind of being the ringleader of all of us. Like she's great. She's a perfect den mother.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. You use that word, mother hen. All right. They're telling me to wrap up, but I have one more question for Molly. Molly, you've been in a lot of movies. We all know that, and a lot of great movies too. Actually, your filmography is pretty awesome.
Thank you.
But it's kind of relevant a lot these days. Your parents in We're the Millers was Catherine Hahn and Nick Offerman. So, what was it like to have two of the coolest parents ever play your parents in a movie? That's all I wanted to ask.
Oh my God, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Nick Offerman took so many selfies on my cell phone. He would just reach into my bag and steal my phone, and I would just like come back to like check my text messages, and I would just have 50 selfies of him on my phone. Like, just the funniest guy. And Catherine, like, I wish Catherine was my real mom. Like, she's so talented. I learned so much just from being around her. That movie was the best. I mean, to this day, I would love to do a sequel. Like, you know, we're the Fitzgeralds.
Oh, there you go. You got to pitch that now.
I'm trying, you know, like we're still out there.
All right. Well, Molly Quinn, Mickey Reece, thank you both for talking with me today. Agnes is playing at Tribeca online on the 11th, correct?
On Saturday.
Saturday. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And we hope everybody goes to see it, watch it virtually if you can. It's an excellent, a very interesting, very unique movie, a very unique look at exorcisms and nuns. It's kind of awesome. So
thank you. Thank
you
so much.
Thank you, both of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.